I think to start, just tell me why your office decided to put this case of Fredrico Lowe-Bey under review.
So the way things work in our conviction integrity unit is we will review any submission someone makes. Those submissions can come in from a prison inmate is in the form of just a written letter. They can come from a parent, or in Fredrico Lowe-Bey's case, he has very experienced, skilled counsel that submitted a application for review of his case. So that's how the case came into us.
Okay, and so explain the process once you decide you're going to review a conviction. What happens after that?
Okay, and just to be clear, we review any submission we receive. And when we received his submission, it initially went through an initial review in our conviction integrity unit. And most of the submissions we receive, quite frankly, are screened out after that initial review. We look at them and we're able to determine right away that this is not a case that's going to ever reach the level of us being able to go forward and argue that it's a case of actual innocence. That's a very high standard. In Mr. Lowe-Bey's case, his case did make it past the initial review. And so now it's waiting further review in our office. And if it makes it past that stage, then it would go to a final review process where we really do a really in-depth investigation to determine whether or not it's a case that we can take forward and meet the standard of proving actual innocence by clear and convincing evidence, which is a very high standard.
And, okay, so just to be clear, so it passed the initial review, you had a further review, and then the review after that is what is pending right now. Your office hasn't decided whether or not to.
The stage that Mr. Lowe-Bey's case is at is that it is awaiting a further review at this point.
Okay, awaiting further review. Okay, just
yes.
So I have that clear. And the further review, can you give me a glimpse into what that would entail in a case? What do you have to, from the case file to witnesses to other things, stuff like that? What happens?
Okay, so you have the initial review, which involves a member of our conviction integrity unit, usually the conviction integrity attorney herself, sitting down, reviewing the file, and making a determination. Is there more to look at here? Do I want to take a deeper look at this case? That's the initial review. The second review is actually that process of taking a deeper dive. And that really usually probably involves just reviewing everything available in the file, making an assessment as to whether or not it's a matter that we want to go into a full investigation on. And the conviction integrity unit, if they think that it is such a matter, they would bring it to the executive committee and make a presentation saying, these are the reasons why we think this matter warrants a full investigation by our office. And they present it to the executive committee. I make the ultimate decision as to whether or not it goes forward to a full review process, a full investigative process, and I make that determination with input from members of the executive committee. And, I tell people collectively, my executive committee probably represents, 150 years of prosecutorial experience. So it's a very experienced group taking a look at these matters.
Mm-hmm. And who else besides the conviction review attorney is involved in reviewing the rest of the case file once that happens?
So if we determine after the presentation to the executive committee that it is a matter that involves that warrants, that justifies a fuller investigation, what we have done to date and what we plan to continue to do, because it's a great way to approach it, is we usually appoint a very experienced attorney at a private law firm, usually someone who was a former prosecutor. Like, for instance, in the Christopher Dunn case, former circuit attorney, assistant circuit attorney, and former judge and former Court of Appeals judge Booker Shaw was who we appointed as a special assistant circuit attorney to conduct a fuller investigation. But what we would do is we would look to partner with a private firm, appoint someone as a special assistant circuit attorney, and have the firm use their resources and their team to conduct a full investigation, meaning interviewing witnesses, getting additional expert opinions if that's necessary, and really, kind of conducting a full investigation of the matter. And once they complete that investigation, they then turn their findings over to me and the Conviction Integrity Unit, and we make that final assessment as to whether or not this is a matter that we want to actually make a motion to the court to set the conviction aside on the basis of actual innocence.
And so what's the advantage of sourcing to a private firm with resources? Is it just a matter of resources that this office maybe doesn't have to dedicate to that, or is there another reason for that?
Well, if you go back when we first, when I was first appointed and took over, and we had a backlog of, well over 600 applications for review pending, and we had a backlog of cases in the warrant office, and we had 257 homicides pending. We had our hands full, and the office wasn't fully staffed. At that point, it was an absolute necessity that if we were going to do this work that shouldn't wait, we were going to need to partner with a private firm to get it done. Things in the office are more stable now. We probably could do some of this work internally, but there's private firms who are looking to do pro bono work. There's very experienced, skilled former prosecutors at those firms who are happy to do the work and have a chance to give back to this office and to the community. So it's just a great partnership. It works out really well. And I think from the firm's perspective, it gives them a chance to do community service, and it gives their younger attorneys a chance to get involved in something other than their day-to-day cases and do something that's maybe a bit more interesting to them. So it's a real win-win situation, and we plan to continue in that way.
How many conviction review cases are pending at the moment?
Pending at the moment, I couldn't give you an exact number. Like I said, we had the backlog of 600. I know we got through most of those. Pending currently, I couldn't give you the number. Honestly, I only focus on the ones that have been identified that have survived the initial review. That's what I hear about them. I don't hear about every submission that's made. But in terms of the ones that have survived the initial review that we're looking at currently, is probably about 5.
Gotcha. Okay. And so if the full review goes into effect, this is a case where DNA is a factor. Is that on the table for your office to possibly try to test that DNA? My understanding is that it's never been put into a law enforcement database up to this point.
So are you talking about specifically about the Fredrico Lowe-Bey case?
Yes.
Okay. So I have not read deeply into the Fredrico Lowe-Bey case yet. I did have a meeting with his attorneys where they shared kind of their overview of the matter with me, but I haven't delved deeply into it. So I don't, not prepared to speak, nor would I speak to the specific facts of the case. We don't talk about pending investigations. That's a longstanding policy of the office. But when we go to the investigative review, the final review, where we are really taking a hard look at it to determine whether or not we can go to the court and prove actual innocence by clear and convincing evidence, when we get to that point, we will, trust me, leave no stone unturned. So we will do whatever is necessary before we take really the extraordinary step of going to the court and saying, we actually believe there's actual innocence here, and we can prove it by clear and convincing evidence, and you need to set this conviction aside.
Chris, any burning questions?
No, just why is it important, for your office to show the community that these things are happening? Like obviously you're overwhelmed with plenty that don't need review, but when there's one that shows up on your desk that, seems to be valid, you guys go all in, right?
Yeah, no, I think the reason why we established the Conviction Integrity Unit here, previously in the Circuit Attorney's Office, there has never been an attorney dedicated to conviction integrity. This is the first time in the history of the office that we've had that. The reason why I believe that the conviction integrity unit is important and that us conducting these reviews is important is that, we need to demonstrate to the community that we don't believe that we are infallible, that we have the integrity to look at ourselves and where mistakes have been made, where an injustice has occurred, seek to correct that. I think that's a value. I think it's a community value. I think it's something that causes the community to, it increases the community trust in our office because they understand that that we are willing to ask the hard questions about cases that we handled.
Anything else you wanted to add?
Just that, I would reiterate that I just think conviction integrity is an important aspect of what we do. That's why I went to the Board of Aldermen and asked for funding to fund a dedicated conviction integrity position, and they did that, and we are now doing that work, and we'll continue to do that work, and I think it just demonstrates to the community that we are an office that takes the concept that it is better that a guilty man go free than that an innocent man be convicted and sentenced to prison time, that we take that seriously and that's something that we work hard to uphold, that concept that we will deprive no one of their liberty unjustly.
I have one more just real quick if we have time. You obviously took this job in a really tough spot. How important is it for your office to, where is that on the priority list of earning back the trust of the community?
Yeah, we, so when I was appointed, there were a bunch of things that were high on the priority list, and we really couldn't place them in any particular order. We kind of had to do them all at once because they all were important. So, right up front was getting the office restaffed, working to rebuild that relationship of trust with the community, and certainly conviction integrity was an important part of that. The Christopher Dunn matter was already pending, and I knew that the community didn't want to see that matter linger. They wanted to see it addressed, even though we had other issues to deal with. So we were able to focus on that right away, and we're ultimately successful in getting Mr. Dunn's conviction set aside.
And the conviction integrity prosecutor, does she do that full time, or is she also trying cases and other things in the office?
She does conviction integrity full time. She is also my policy advisor, so helps me take a look at policy issues in the office. We think that's an important aspect of conviction integrity, that you constantly evaluate your processes and policies within the office so that you don't have the cases that get to the point where you have to have conviction integrity take a look at them, right? So that's part of her duties. She does carry a caseload of about 10 cases that I am first chair on and she's second chair on. And we think that's important because you don't want to have a conviction integrity attorney who's not in touch with what's happening in the courthouse, what's happening on our cases. So that really gives her that added insight into exactly what's going on real time in the courthouse and in the criminal justice system, so that it really aids her in her conviction integrity work.
And so with this organization that took on Mr. Lowe-Bey's case, is there a scenario where your office would, or maybe this firm that you would hire if you'd agree to the review, that would work with those attorneys that have been, I know Rick Sindel is the local guy who's been working with them on the case. Is there a scenario where there's some collaboration there or something like that?
Absolutely. And that's a scenario we had in the Christopher Dunn case with the Innocence Project. So how it would work is we would basically appoint a special assistant circuit attorney at a private law firm who would lead our investigation. And certainly in the course of conducting their investigation, they're going to take advantage of any resources. They're going to information share with Mr. Lowe-Bey's counsel and make sure they take all of that into consideration as they conduct their investigation. Like I said, that worked out really well in the Christopher Dunn case. We had a great partnership with the Innocence Project, the Midwest Innocence Project.
Yeah, I know these guys. These guys are based out of New Jersey, but I think they've taken on like 4 or 5 cases.
Yeah, Rick Sindel is here, and I've known Rick for a long time. He's been a defense attorney for a long time, and I had cases with him back when I was a federal prosecutor in the late '90s, early 2000s. So Mr. Sindel's a very, very well respected attorney, and certainly we would consult with him if we got to the point where we were conducting a full investigation.